Call this meeting to order. We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Edwards.
Here.
Mrs. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mrs. Lee.
Here.
Mrs.
Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
We, since this weekend, when I emailed the tentative agenda out, we have an addition, under superintendent items. Let's see, turn to that, let's see. It is, under item E, the resolution approved in assembly, with steerage straight for the amount of $7,500. We will talk more about that. Kelsey's got a few things to say about that, and I will as well.
I'd like to move to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve it.
Second.
Moved by Israel, second by Jean. Roll.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Grant.
Yes.
Mrs. Lee. Yes. Mr. Edwards.
Yes. Last month's board minutes, do we have anybody who'd like to,
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Jean and Dora? Have a roll call.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes,
Mrs. Grant.
yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mrs. Lee. Yes. Mr. Edwards.
Yes. Guess we have no public participation, that was getting on that. Sponsors report, do you have anything from Ed?
I do have a few items that he shared with me today. Just a reminder, there are two forms from Margaretta that are paperclip there. I'd ask that if possible, if you fill those out tonight. One is the disclosure form, annual disclosure form, and one's the conflict of interest form. There is also a Townsend conflict of interest form from our policies that has to also be filled out each year. And I spoke with Becky from Amy Goodson's office today to make sure that we had the right one for that, as with the change of policies and everything. So that one is in the stack with your paperclip there. And I'd ask that you return those three forms to me, please, when they're completed. Secondly, Mr. Kurt wanted me to remind everybody that November 1st, they have a staff professional development day on trauma-informed care tied to North Point ESC. And Townsend is going to join them that day as well. And we'll just have our students work remotely that day. But this ties into our one plan with trauma training. And we just felt that it was a good opportunity to pick up that professional development opportunity with Margaret's staff that day. Then finally, the sponsor site visit, the first site visit is scheduled for October 23rd at 1 p.m. Mr. Kurt and I will meet, and he will then also meet with a few other staff members and a couple students as well. Again, that's October 23rd. That's it.
Well, we also talked about transportation. And the fact that we have some issues at times where Margaretta is running, short on bus drivers. And Kelsey's gonna be sure to monitor the amount of times that we're having to cancel or change transportation routes because they don't have a bus driver available and report back to us. And the other thing that they talked about was the utilization of the van to transport students. They use our van to transport one of their handicapped students. But we also talked about utilizing that van to be able to transport to some of the sites if Margaret is not able to transport. But they're having a real issue with getting enough bus drivers. So that's something we just need to be aware of.
How many cars involved?
Our largest van can hold 9 plus the driver. Then our handicap van, I believe, has 3 plus a handicap student plus the driver. I believe it's 4 or 5 that we can take there. And then the smaller van, which is our oldest van, we can get, I believe, 6, so 5 plus the driver in that. That van is usually driven by Judy, who's taking the meals to Sandusky free.
Going on with our board reports, Jean, do you have anything for us?
No, I don't.
Anybody else?
Nope.
Thank you, Jean, for filling in for me on that.
Yes.
Did you have anything for the, that one meeting, or are you gonna talk about that later, our goals?
We'll talk about that.
All right. Hearing nothing else, move on to the treasurer's report.
First we have, just an update on our Stronger Connections grant. So this is a grant that was due last year, we didn't tap into it at all last year, it does require some extensive planning, you're meant to put together kind of committee. So we've had 2 meetings so far this year with a variety of stakeholders, we brought in teachers, the SRO, invited the nurse, invited Sandusky Family Services, family liaison, admin team of students, we tried to get a really wide variety, we've met a couple times so far. And on the second meeting, we did come to a decision on what kind of student assembly we wanted to move forward with. Leslie had seen this speaker at the school counselor conference, the national one in Chicago over the summer, and really liked him, said she felt it would really resonate with our kids. Supposedly, he does this great vaping presentation, which is a very large issue right now. And he has a lot of kids turn in their vapes after. So we think it'd be a really good fit. I do have a video to show you. Before I do, we also had the opportunity to bring in another assembly. They reached out to Ryan with kind of a unique scenario where they were already going to be in the area, and they said, hey, would you like me to add you on for this? It's going to be like an hour.
Yeah, this is November 7th, they're gonna come here, when our students are here during the day. It's called Attaboy. And I believe they may have been at Margaret at one point, but they have a band that plays music, but they have a message that goes along with music about acceptance and not bullying and you know, making good decisions. They kind of touch base on some different topics, but they do it through their music as well as speaking to the kids. And they reached out to me because I believe they started with Sandusky. They got Sandusky at the end of that week already locked in. So then they were trying to reach out to other schools with a highly discounted price because they're already gonna be in the area to come to your school for a much cheaper price that week. So they offered to come here for $1,250, and that is for an assembly that's extremely cheap. And we have the funds with the Stronger Connections grants. We were talking about how to use them, and it was just too good of an offer to pass down. So we're gonna have them come in. We're gonna try to set up the cafeteria space with seats for the kids that day and create space for their band to perform down there and present the assembly to our kids, Townsend's kids, and I think it'd be a nice message for kids.
The vaping one, we are gonna try and do kind of on a larger scale. We haven't figured out all the logistics yet, but the goal is to get kids from all locations. We're gonna partner with Margaret and utilize the gym space. So the goal for that one is to be a larger scale and be able to bring kiddos from each of our areas.
And Margaret is also gonna have access to that speaker, which is going to be most likely February 12th.
Okay.
The steered straight, which is much more costly than the Attaboy.
It does come with some extras, some add-ons, like there's some courses that are given to teachers for like how to prevent vaping. I have to look into it a little deeper on the extra things, but it does come with some extra bonuses, some books for kids, things like that. So the price is steeper, but you do get a little bit more with it.
There is towards the end of your folder, there's a recommendation letter that I just printed off that another school had written after he had spoken to their students. I just included that for you to look over.
You can move on to our packet. You can go ahead and flip past our minutes. First, we have our class reconciliation for the month of September. We ended the month with $10,890,755.19. Next, we have our disbursement summary. I did pick out just a couple of things just in case they looked unfamiliar. About 2/3 of the way down, a small payment to ITIP Ohio. That's for professional development, it's just a vendor we don't see often. On the second page, the very last one at the bottom, you'll see a very large payment to Jefferson County. Just a reminder, this is our online curriculum, VLA. And we have a very large payment at the start of every year because we buy 1-year licenses up front. So that's always the bulk of our cost for our curriculum. We do have other smaller bills throughout the year, but that is our main cost. So we take a hit up front, but then the costs are lower throughout the year. So you'll kind of see that represented on our board spreadsheet where our supplies are high at the moment, but it should equal out as we move through the year. Are there any questions over this disbursement summary? Okay, next we have our outstanding disbursement summary. You'll notice that this is pulled for September, so these were all the outstanding disbursements as of September 30th. But you'll see that most of them have been reconciled since then, since I pulled this on October 10th. There are actually only 13 on these 3 pages that were still outstanding as of the 10th. Next, we have our spreadsheet for the month. Bottom left section, you'll see as noted, supplies are at 26.63%, so high because of that initial curriculum bill. Our debt service is also high, that's our capital outlay, so we knew that was gonna happen with paying for the concrete, or the parking lot, excuse me. So our total, we had 79,190 budgeted, that was 35,000 contingency, as we discussed, along with the parking lot cost. So of course, that's gonna look very high at 55%, but throughout the year, that'll come down. And that percentage will equal out over time. Our other objects is also high at the 26.27%. We pay our liability insurance in July, and that's one of the largest costs of our 800. So again, just a bulky expense upfront, but as we move throughout the year, the expense should equal out. Our overall percentage is still good. We should expect to be at about 25%. We're sitting at 22.48% of expected expenses, and revenues at 27%. Slightly above where we would expect to be at this time of year at 25. Does anyone have any questions over the spreadsheet? Next, we have our monthly payment. And I had noted in my email that our October payment had come down. So I did include, you can see that our ADM, our average daily membership, which that's essentially our FTE, that's our total enrollment with our attendance percentage factored in. So it did come down quite a bit in October. It was at 397 in September and it was at 359 in October. So I did pull some data points from last year that I wanted to present, but I do have to explain them because they do have a slight skew to them. So this first graph, you can see we've got fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25 to compare, and this was the total projected revenue. Now you can see in July, August, and September we're much higher than we were last year, but again, it's hard to compare because of some differences in how the funding worked. They upped the per pupil amount, but that didn't happen yet in those months, that happened in October. And also the equity supplement came into play in October. So there are values that weren't included in those first 3 months. Now, if you recall last October, we also had an issue with our FTE reporting where the number was over-reported. So this is an outlier. This is also not an accurate data point. But once we start looking at November, we can see we remained pretty close to 5,500,000. Sometimes we were slightly over it, such as in March. Sometimes slightly under it, and we ended the year at 5,578,000. So up until October, we were sitting there as well. Which one thing to consider when we look at that is that our expenses for this year have increased because we added some staff, we added the location, and obviously over time, we're hoping to see that location grow. That's not gonna happen immediately. But as we consider our finances long-term and next month, we look at the 5-year forecast, we have to consider how our funding looks compared to, for example, last year, and how our expenses look compared to last year. Because if we continue to grow our expenses, we need to find ways to grow our revenue as well. So I also did a comparison of the ADM, and we were just slightly higher through July, August, and September in fiscal year 24 than fiscal year 25. But again, you'll see that drop in October. This is an outlier. Again, that's the inaccurate data. But through November to June, we stayed between 390 and about 400. So pretty steady, not a ton of movement, which is good. But we would definitely like to see this come back up to here and even grow a little past it as we see, hopefully, our Lorraine location grow a little bit. Finally, I did a comparison of the monthly payment amounts. Again, you'll see that fiscal year 24 in these first 3 months was much lower. That's due to no equity supplement, the lower per pupil amounts. Again, we've got our outlier, but then we remained in just a slight fluctuation, pretty steady. And again, we'd like to see this number get closer up to here. But I thought it was useful to look at the comparison of what we looked like at each point last year and where we compare now. So this is something we can revisit throughout the year as we get more data points, as we get more months in, and I think it's helpful to view the visual.
I think just looking at those differences of spikes, I think last year we had some issues initially with the attendance tracking and that initial wave of students that got withdrawn due to the 72-hour rule abatement after that count was pulled in September for the October payment.
Yeah.
So that might be why it shows a little higher last October versus now.
Yeah.
That count is lower because we had
No, yeah.
done that. I'm just sharing that. I think that might be a factor why you see those two opposite spikes.
No, this is the data point I was saying wasn't one to consider. It's an outlier because of inaccurate data reporting. Yeah, so I was saying don't pay attention to the October one, but as we look at November, December. So yeah, again, the October one is not really one we want to consider because we had some inaccuracies with our FTE. That was a spike that was not accurate, but as we look at the other data points, I think those are helpful to view. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
No, but I think it's helpful. I do think the
Yes,
charts are
yeah.
helpful.
And I can share that if you'd like. I can send that out in an email also. I attempted to print it for you, but I'm still having issues with color printing, not connecting to my computer. And I thought the color was helpful to see the 2 different years, so. There's no questions over that. We can go ahead and move on to item D. So item D, we have resolved that the Board of Directors of Townsend Community School approves the Special Education Services Annual Report and Special Education Expenditures Annual Report as presented. So this is something we have to submit to our sponsor each year. My portion, the spreadsheet, is our FY24 special education expenditures. It's reflective of our MOE data. And it's just broken down into salaries, retirements, purchase services, supplies, capital outlay. It just breaks it down into what money is going where. And that's this sheet. Sorry, I did skip ahead through those monthly payments. Questions over the annual special education expenditures report. Okay. Following the expenditure. What? I wouldn't think so, because it's not making it into the appended data.
Okay.
You don't think so?
No, I'm just trying to already specific first. I think you're fine.
Okay. Next, we have the Special Education Services Annual Report. Ashley completes this for us each year. This is a breakdown of services and it goes into some detail, it goes into grade levels and ENIS codes. There's some data on in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension. As well as assessment accommodations and modifications. Does anyone have any questions over that?
We don't have. So this is the handicapping code, the handicap code. 13, do we have a breakdown of the handicapping conditions that we're providing services for?
You're talking in terms of like what number 4 represents.
The
what
EMIS
5
codes.
Represents.
Right,
I don't have those right in front of me, but we could get those for you.
Yeah,
okay. Cause I see the disability under part 4 where it talks about assessment
yeah,
and alternative assessment, and we have the disability areas, and those are probably the EMIS codes for the disability areas, but we don't have really an indication. So does that mean we have 9 people? I know one thing we did was we hired a speech pathologist. So under the code 5, which is speech pathology, if that's the EMIS code, we have 0 students. Under speech only. So.
Ashley put this together, so I would have to double check on the data to
Okay,
make sure there wasn't something. That was-
okay. That would be. I think important when we look at related services and services we're buying. Either through Presence Learning or the county or. The speech pathologist, it'd be helpful to have a breakdown of how many students are really. Being covered by those individuals, what's their caseload? And a breakdown of disability areas, that would be good. And I kind of know what those are, but I'm not sure other people would, so maybe. Not just the disability number, but what the disability.
I know where to go in Dale, so look them up, but right off the end, I don't have
Yeah.
those memorized.
any other questions? The final item for my report is, item 8. Resolved that the Board of Directors of Townsend Community School approves the electric audit project agreement with Yankel and Associates Incorporated and Ohio Schools Council pursuant to the terms and conditions of the agreement as presented. So we joined the Ohio Schools Council last year as part of, maybe it was 2 years, as part of buying, I can't remember. As part of buying our first van, they gave us the van bids and pricing, and it was really nice to be a part of that group. Well, they have several other ways that you can benefit through that membership. And I recently had a meeting where they kind of went through their other services with me and other ways that we could benefit. And one of which was this electric audit project. So essentially, this firm goes in and audits our past electric payments. And any money that we get back, then they get a percentage of, but if we don't get any money back, we don't owe anything, it's at no cost to us. So we only pay them if we get money back, and these are for bills that we've already paid. So to me, it's no harm, no foul. If we don't get anything, we don't owe anything, but if we can get some money back, then I think it would be a really good thing.
I move we approve items A through E of the treasurer's report. I'll second.
Moved by Jean, second by Dora. Roll, please.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Plum,
Yes.
Mrs. Salee. Yes. Mr. Evans.
Yes. Superintendent's report.
Okay, first for informational items, we'll take a look at the breakdown for enrollment. As you can see here on the sheet, you can look at this month and you can look back 12 months ago at October of 2023, and it's kind of interesting as we look, school district by school district at which school districts have gone up, which have gone down. Quite a few have gone up, but As we're aware, Fremont has gone down from 91 last year at this time to 66 at this time. So that's the area where we've seen the greatest decline, but several others have increased or maintained where they're at. At this time, a year ago, our enrollment was 514, and as of today, it was up to 509. That number changes by the day, depending on who's enrolling, depending on who's being withdrawn, or maybe transferred to another district, or maybe even graduating. We do have 6 graduates as of today for this school year. So when you take the current total enrolled plus the graduates, that's 515 students. Norwalk continues to be our area of greatest enrollment with 79. And we're slowly growing in Lorraine County. We're not growing too fast, but we're seeing some growth. You can see our Vermillion number is climbing up. We've got some students from Sheffield Lake, which is Brookside High School. They've been contacting us, our current students. We had a couple siblings from Elyria that are in the process of enrolling with us. So there is some growth there in the Lorraine County. We also have this Friday, the state support team is taking the transition coordinators from the Lorraine County area on a tour of the campus there at Lorraine Community College. And one of their stops is at our classroom there. So the other schools, their transition coordinators have an opportunity to see our classroom in action. So I was supposed to be doing a PD with Lorraine County DSC, but I'm going to go to the campus for that instead. And Karen Circle's Governor Karen Gordon now. She's going to be there as well, along with our 2 teachers. So it's a good opportunity for other schools to see Townsend in action and for them to learn more about our school.
What's the date of that?
That is this Friday. They're coming just after 9 o'clock to our classroom. Any questions on the enrollment breakdown?
Do you see, with Tiffin, do you see the influence of what's happening in Fremont is affecting the Tiffin enrollment?
It's hard to say. If you look back a year ago, we were at 33 and now we're at 25. But look back 9 months ago and our number was similar to where it's at right now.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's just a temporary dip
Okay.
or if it's gonna stay at that
Oh,
level.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the second item there on our informational items is this coming Monday night. We are doing one of our family fun nights and we're also going to tie in our Title I meeting that night. We're going to have a family fun night here at Castelia, or the Castelia Learning Center from 5 to 6:30 p.m. And in your folder, there's a flyer that looks like this here. If anyone's available that night, you'd like to come stop in, you're more than welcome to. As we bring in students and their families, and we'll have some community partners here. Karen Gordon, he wants to say Karen Circle. Karen Gordon has done a lot of work behind the scenes, getting community partners lined up and everything for them.
That should be it for these run at board meeting. Should. Good idea.
Okay, moving on to new business. We have a resolution in A there to approve the awarding of high school diplomas to the following students upon successful completion of the graduation requirements as set forth by the state of Ohio. We have 3 this month: Cassandra Korick, Olivia Jackson, and Elena Velasquez Hush. Item B is a resolution to adopt a Townsend Thunder Pride flyer as a visual display of Townsend's values and goals. I'm going to pause here. So last month we had some great discussion at our board meeting about setting the goals for this year, but making these goals something visual for all, and having these goals be something that's not just board goals, but they are goals of all the staff and goals that we want to represent students, our families, and our entire school. And we had a great planning meeting about a week and a half ago here. Jean was able to attend that day, and with Kelsey's fantastic artistic talents here, we were able to put together this flyer. I'm sure she was able to put together this flyer. That kind of took what was discussed in that meeting and put it into a good visual example of what our goals are as Townsend, or what we want to represent. So the Townsend Thunder Pride, the word pride there represents purpose, relationships, inclusion, direction, and equity, which are some of the values that we want our school to stand by. And underneath there, you'll see the two main goals, which ties to our one plan. One is increasing graduation rates, and the core strategies under that would be college and career ready, literacy initiatives, community and family engagement, personalized graduation plans, and mentoring students, all tie back to increasing graduation rates. And then our second goal is increasing attendance. And then core strategies tied to increasing attendance would be school climate and PBIS initiatives, relationships and resources within all communities served, culturally responsive learning opportunities, instruction, and mentoring students. And then at the bottom there, we have our mission statement. So I think this is a very good representation of our values and our goals and what Townsend stands for. And I think the group that had a lot of good collaboration in putting this together. And obviously the artistic talents, Kelsey, were a big part of that. So with that being said, I'm going to just present this to the board for any discussion you might have about this flyer.
Well, the thing I wanted to just add was that this coincides with the one plan that has been developed by the staff already. And in terms of measurements, we don't have those listed here because we were trying to be, not as wordy and things. But that is developed, and Ryan can provide that to you, the plan as far as how things will be developed and how it will be measured. So there's a lot more detail that goes into it, but it seemed as though we were hoping that we were accomplishing what we were kind of commissioned to do, is in terms of being succinct about what we stand for.
I like it.
I think it looks good.
I mean,
Yeah.
This is something that students can see, they can relate to it, it's, everything's there, they're part of this. And hopefully that's what we drive, when we talk about core strategies. I love it. It's good. Especially if you're not familiar with Townsend, I think this is huge. This is a one pager that you can hand to somebody and say, this is what we do.
Yeah,
Right? This
Yeah.
is what yes, we have goals, and this is how you're a part of this goal. You are our goal.
right.
So,
Or it's a great marketing tool,
yes.
so I think if approved, I think this is something that we share on our family fun night next week. We can post it also throughout the building so that students and staff see it on a daily basis. We can put it on our website, we can put it on our Facebook page, and just, promote this visual of what Townsend stands for, and what our goals and values are.
The only thing, and just what I think is the staff is what drives this, right? So it's what they do, and I would just think that they would be able to speak to this, to these goals, right? If someone was to ask, like, these are our policies, these are our procedures, this is how we operate, and be able to, if somebody had, well, how do you, college and career readiness, like explain, like that's, I think a big part, yes, it's great to have this and to see it, but to be able to speak to each one of these.
Right.
To someone who may not know, or to that student, or,
Somebody coming to enroll.
right, exactly. Like, what are PBIS initiatives, we should be able to speak to that, and even though it's maybe not what they do, I mean, you know what I mean, it's just understand that has to be driven to the staff to be well versed in this and truly understand it, which that's their buy-in too at that point.
Right.
They understand it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I even wondered, and I don't know if there's any funds available, or if we could write a grant for it, but to have some T-shirts made with pride and those words underneath it.
Well, we have our print shop. So it could be something maybe like we put in the PBI store for students and kind of get some of those out there, so, yeah, we funded that startup out of a grant, so that wouldn't really be an upfront cost, that's definitely,
I saw a T-shirt down the hallway today that they had designed.
Oh, the
And I
new
want to say
sunshine,
it said something with pride on the T-shirt. I have to go
the
double
new
check.
sunshine fund? I
Yeah,
don't think it is pride,
it's not pride.
I don't think it's,
Forget what the word is.
I don't agree, but the new sunshine, the.
So that started, the print shop is going,
Yeah,
well,
it seems to be
Yeah,
going.
the kids like it.
It's not like fully at where they want it to be, but they've started utilizing it, yes.
So the staff every year orders the Sunshine Fun t-shirts and normally it's an outside order, and so this year they're ordering through the print shop, which is really exciting and neat,
Good.
yeah.
Moving on to item C, then we have a resolution to approve a contract with North Central Ohio ESC for vision services at a rate of $85 per hour for fiscal year 2025 as presented. This is something that we annually approve. It's a service that's occasionally used, but not very often. But we have always gone through the North Central Ohio ESC for that. Item D is a resolution to retroactively approve an invoice for attendance auditing reports through PRC Gen LLC in Jefferson County ESC in the amount of $6,826.05. So at the beginning of the school year, we had met with them. We had some changes that had to be made, some updates and improvements to the attendance reports that they're building. So our attendance tracking and reports is extremely complex because we're taking what's in VLA, PRC Gen is taking that data and transposing it, coordinating it, so that it's like two-way talking with NOACA's Dazzle, and it's very complex. And there's pieces that we have to put in the scheduled seat time. We've got multiple reports, one for funding purposes, one for attendance tracking for our attendance officers. So there's a lot to our attendance reports. And it's really important that everything's accurate because our funding is determined by it. The attendance tracking, FTE review, most likely in June is part of that. So they recently did some work and came up to be a little bit more than I had anticipated. So I had asked them to give us a breakdown of the hours here, which is the second page. Here's the invoice. And after I received that, I asked them to give us a breakdown of the hours, which I received today, actually. I've asked it a couple times. So here's the breakdown of where the hours came from. So basically, they're doing different programming. PRC Gen is doing different computer programming to make all these different mechanisms to talk to each other and to work for attendance reports. Moving forward, I expressed to VLA that we need to have a better system for giving us an estimate up front when they have to make changes like this, so that the invoice at the end is something that's in line with what we expected to come down. A larger number than what was anticipated. But anyways, that is on the agenda here for approval because it is greater than $5,000. And then item E is a resolution to approve an assembly with steered straight for the amount of $7,500, which we spoke about earlier. And again, that is not general funds, but that is Stronger Connections grant funds. And then moving on, we have item F, it's a resolution to approve the following revised and new policies as presented here. Policy 203 is non-discrimination policy. There's some changes there, and the changes tie into the next two there. Policy 203A, ideology of religious expression policy, and policy 203B, religious expression based policy, along with updates. Actually, this one is new because we have to have a standalone cell phone policy. Policy 241 is the cell phone policy that by state law, we have to have that standalone policy now. So those are either new or revised policies. And then item G is resolved, the board of directors has reviewed and approved the following policies, which are in that Dropbox link that we have. Policies 102, 106, 208, 217, 232, and 205. These are policies that we have to approve on an annual basis. So as you can see, this language all comes from our lawyer from Amy's office here. Further resolved that the board of directors has provided a copy of the public records policy to the treasurer as designated records custodian. Resolved that the board of directors hereby acknowledges that it has reviewed the following policies and procedures in section 300 of the board policy manual to ensure safety of students, employees, and other persons, to ensure that its policies and procedures comply with all applicable health and safety laws and regulations. So these policies that are listed here are 301, 302, 303, 304, 305, 306, 307, 308, 309, 310, 311, 311A, 312, 313, 314, 315, 316, 317, 318, 319, 320, 321. All those policies that are policies that we have to approve on an annual basis, which ties our compliance. And that is item G, which is my final item.
Any questions? None. Anybody would like to move to approve the superintendent's report? Moved by Dora.
I'll second.
Second by Israel. The roll.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mrs. Celine,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes,
Mrs. Zachary.
Yes. And at this time, I think we need to go into executive session.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss the employment of a public employee.
I'll second.
Jean, second by Israel. 7:45.